Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Pandora. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like this episode being kind of the focus on like Thomas and his dad, because obviously his dad's back in the picture, and we get introduced to Billy Dwayne, aka Billy D, who is... I wonder, is that supposed to be kind of like a slight nod to, the actor like Billy D. Williams? Probably not, but it just makes me immediately think that. Regardless, I mean, I know it's his name, but that's just where my mind went anyway. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, you kind of meet him. He seems like he is kind of a smooth talker. He's the life of the party. He's doing like telepathic tricks. It's like, oh, touch my hand and I'll be able to tell you what drink you want. And he's able to do it to everyone except for Jax. He wasn't able to read her mom, which is kind of like, okay, so there's even more stuff that doesn't work on Jax. Last episode, it was whatever that infection was, that virus meant to kill Zatarians. She was immune to that. I mean, obviously it had an effect on humans, but obviously because she isn't one, it didn't work on her either. So there's that. And now there's this situation, and obviously Thomas is the most upset about all of this just because he knows who his dad is, but everyone else is kind of like, no, your dad's good. I guess because also Jax is coming from the position of like, what did your dad really do to piss you off? It's because I think from her perspective, it's like she'd give anything to be with her parents again. So it's like, when you have the opportunity, why not, take that chance? It didn't come up exactly like that, but I think there was some part of Jax that probably felt like that, just because she didn't have her parents around anymore. It's like, you need to have yours around. So there's that whole situation. So along those same lines, it does actually turn out that Billy is here for a particular reason. He needs money because he's in with this group known as the Hypatia Syndicate. He needs to steal something known as the Jindo. And it's like, I need your help to steal it, but obviously Thomas is reluctant to help his dad out because the thing is, it's like, you've burned me too many times. You come into my life, you've lied, you've done this and you've done that. It's like, I can't trust anything you say anymore. So obviously Thomas is very reluctant to help him. At the same time, there's all this stuff with Xander and Pilar when they went out to look at the Tereshkova's wreckage and stuff like that, which interesting conversation came up because of last episode. Pilar is kind of reluctant to go down command track. That's what she wanted before, but now it's gonna think of like, well, because of that, like, she doesn't want to be responsible for someone else. She just only wants to be responsible for herself, because that's a heavy burden in itself, being a commander. Like, when you lose people, that's on you. But then Xander's kind of like, well, we're all responsible for people regardless of whatever position we're in, like, and the fact of the matter is, it's not about the people you lose, it's about the people we can save, But Xander used the whole thing with Pilar as an excuse to look for the Tereshkova's black box. He tried to make it seem like it was, a test or whatnot. And he brings it to Osborn, but Osborn's like, yeah, we're not going to bring this to Earthcom's attention until, then I'll look through this stuff first. You're under orders not to tell anybody that you found it. Because even, you have Xander being like, wait, what? Because once again, it's like he's trying to justify, being like, if there's even the slightest hint that the Zatarians behind this, you'll ignite a war and stuff like that. I'm like, no, you're trying to hide the fact is that Zatarians were in fact not involved. Either like Osborn, Parallax, or people within Earthcom, because it's hard to say whether there's like a hierarchy group within, some kind of like cabal of some sort exists within Earthcom that is doing a lot of shady stuff behind the scenes, that they're connected to this whole thing with Jax, like this whole Pandora situation. Either them or Parallax, or maybe the both of them, because it does seem like there is some connection there between Parallax and Osborn. So, but I'm kind of leaning more towards like, because Parallax is definitely in the heat of all this, so they must have like controlling people at the top of this whole Earthcom situation. So I'm assuming it's people like Osborn, maybe people higher, maybe people lower on the totem pole. Either way, that's where my mindset is on it. So, but obviously, Jax is there, asking Thomas like, oh, what's up with you and your dad? It's like, oh, you don't want to help? She's like, I understand. Like, you've made your decision. So, as a friend, I'll support your decision. So, and then Tierney, Billy's fiance. At first I was like, she must be part of his grift or something like that. The fact is, because she also took an interest in Jax, is like, the fact is, I've never saw anyone stump Billy D before. So I was like, okay, so like whatever scheme he's got up his sleeve, it's like, you're a part of this and whatnot, aren't you? So I thought like he was, in fact, Billy D was running some kind of scam, gets paid so he can kind of bounce and just kind of disappoint Thomas. I thought that was kind of what the storyline was going to be. completely different. The moment Tierney showed up and she kind of started telling the truth about Billy D, the fact is what he went through and everything, that in itself should have been a sign. Like the fact is that she came there convincing Thomas, it's like your father, whether he lives or dies. I was like, the moment she was talking like that, that's what made me go, okay, you're his handler. I thought like she worked for the Hypatia Syndicate. I was like, you're there to make sure he still sustained for you. You're kind of holding him ransom. I thought like maybe she was threatening Thomas. It's like, if you don't do this, I'll kill Thomas or something. And she's there to kind of, I thought that was kind of like the whole play. But the whole point is, like, I should have figured things out sooner, was like, what I was trying to reference was like, fact is, she knew about Billy's situation. Interesting enough, it turned like, well, it kind of all ties together, but Billy isn't a natural born telepath. He's an empath, like Thomas, hence why Thomas is an empath. His dad has such an affinity for it that, ETC ended up basically cutting open his brain and ended up, implanting like this thing to make it so that he was telekinetic. Basically, it amplified his powers like a whole bunch of folds and made him into a telepath. And obviously some telepaths are used as spies, but because he was such a high-class telepath now, they used him for interrogations. He was able to dive deep into people's minds. And obviously it's not something he talked to his wife, Thomas's mom, or even Thomas about, because it's not something you really want to talk about, because I think it's the same thing as like any soldier. Soldiers are very reluctant to talk about their time in war just because it's not the easiest thing to deal with. But for him, it's like, I want to be the one who carries on that pain. I don't want to have to give that to someone else and kind of ruin things for them. Like, it's a burden I will be the one to carry. And then that whole situation where, Tierney explaining that the fact is, like, this whole, like, happy-go-lucky thing that he's got going on, that he's the life of the party, that's all, in fact, an act, which, makes sense in the grand scheme of things. But I think, what was also, interesting about that, and this is kind of the point I was trying to make, is the fact is she knew about that. That in itself should, because you feel like that'd be some like top secret stuff. The fact is he didn't even tell his own family. He didn't tell his own son about all that. It makes you go, yeah, why would he tell you? Yeah, your fiance. Maybe he felt more comfortable with that, but it just seemed off in that regard. Like, that should have been the key sign of like, the fact is he even told you something like that should have been a sign that like something was definitely up with this whole situation. Even more so later on when she goes to Jax and she starts bringing up the stuff like, oh, Jax, I knew your mom. The fact of the matter is, which that kind of explains some things, but I'll get to that soon enough. But the fact of the matter is she made reference to like Harry Potter and stuff like that. Like, in particular, because I guess it was a book that they read a lot, it's like, 10 points for Gryffindor. So obviously she knew enough to be like, okay, to get Jax's like trust. And it's like, you help out with this whole Thomas situation, and then, hey, maybe I'll tell you about your parents, basically give you the key to kind of figuring this whole thing out. So Jax goes to Thomas and convinces him to help his dad. She comes off, and the moment I was like, you're not going to tell him the real reason why. And she's like, Tierney came to visit me. I was like, oh, so you actually are. But then it was like, no, she didn't. She didn't say what she was going to get from the situation. I was like, that's not good, because Xander had made that whole point earlier that the fact of the matter is her need to kind of go off and do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, is going to alienate her friends and basically get her kicked out of the academy, which, that whole range true, at least that aspect of alienating her friends, because the whole fact is that, because she's so intent on getting answers about that she's willing to do whatever it takes. She's being brash and she's not thinking things through. She's just so in need of answers that she's willing to kind of do anything and drag, because she made the whole point that she feels like everyone that's close to her has bad luck, because like people who get close to her end up in very bad situations. So that's why she's reluctant to kind of, she's scared to get close to people. Obviously, the whole recent Greg situation is kind of an example of that. After losing her parents too, it just, it kind of compiles upon itself. So obviously she's a little reluctant in that department. And Xander's trying to be a friend to her, because even Pilar kind of pointed out the fact that, Xander, you kind of got a thing for Jax. You want to deny it, but even if you want to admit to yourself, I can obviously see it. And even Pilar recognizes that in Xander as well, of like, yeah, you totally like him. You just don't, that she recognizes that in Jax, that Jax has a thing for Xander. And it's like, you're not really to recognize it either. It's like, why are you so intent on looking at the negative side of this dude that you totally like? It's because she likes him that she's afraid to kind of trust him, because it's like he's not telling her everything, which he isn't, is the point I'm trying to make. But the fact is, he even said himself, it's like, I'm under orders, like I have to follow orders. It's like, just because you don't want to follow orders, that doesn't mean I have to be the same way. This is who I am. Like, I follow orders. There's a hierarchy in this situation. When I'm ordered not to say anything, like, I get it. Because in his mind, he probably doesn't think there probably is a connection between what happened to the Tereshkova and what happens to Jack's family is connected. Maybe he does, but he just knows he can't say anything, because if he even hints that there is a chance that there is a connection, he knows that Jax won't ever let it go. So there's that side of thing. He's in a very complicated situation. He wants to help Jax because he also likes her too, but he's also ordered by her uncle not to say anything about anything. But then she kind of refers to him, essentially compares him to a Nazi, because it's the whole thing of like, oh yeah, there's a lot of terrible people in history who've done a lot of terrible things simply because they were following orders, and says that's an excuse of cowards. It's like, really? Under this circumstance, you're going to compare me to Nazis because I won't give you the answers you want because I'm simply following orders? Like, have I done something terrible in that regard? And she even goes, I was a bit harsh. He was like, yeah, a bit, and it's like, wow, that was pretty brutal. It was actually pretty impressive, the actual break-in itself. The fact is that they were willing to, they were doing the whole like smoke thing, like get certain protocols kind of activated, getting the information, the passcode from Osborne by Billy just shaking his hand. And then when the time came to like open the code, Billy couldn't do it because I guess it's like it's a long password and he doesn't have the mind for that. Getting information this quick, sure, but part of me was wondering, is like, is he BSing? Is he trying to pretend like he doesn't know the code so they can't actually get in there? But it was like, no, I think he just couldn't really process it. It took Thomas touching him to be like, wait, I got it, boom, 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 so to get in there. And then the next step was getting past the lasers, which Tierney handled that and doing some crazy, like, what is that Catherine Zeta-Jones movie that people constantly reference? Like, she did something like that, like it's something everything references. I don't remember the movie. I feel like I never saw the movie itself, but I know the scene that everyone's referencing when it's like she slides by the lasers and stuff like that. It's like, holy crap, it's kind of a similar thing to that. So it's like, hey. And then there's the whole thing of, well, I actually kind of forgot to also talk about the fact is, at this point we already know about Tierney's motives. That the fact of the matter is, it's like, I am your handler and whatnot, that basically I can always get you signed back up to ETC. So I'm like, wait, so do you have a connection to all of this? Or are you just like threatening to kind of let them know like, oh, here he is, he could, but the fact is that should have been decided, like, no, she is full blown with them and that she can drag them back into that, which, like I said, I'll kind of get into that later. But the next thing was kind of like, the next lock was basically like this computer brain that basically all it does is think of new passwords, so it's kind of hard to beat. So it took, a powerful telepath like Billy to kind of access it, but it took Thomas being there, because being near Thomas amplifies his power, I guess, because when empaths are together their powers grow stronger, and him being a telepath and his son being an empath, like, I get, it just amplifies his already amplified abilities. So working together, they were able to kind of push through a lot. At the same time, Thomas was able to get inside his dad's mind and to see that, like, oh, I was always on my dad's mind. Like, he does, like, he could never tell how his dad really felt. He could never be like, okay, like, I'd actually forgotten too about the whole Jack situation, that like there was a certain lock too where it's like you need to kind of have clear thoughts. Like, Tierney was able to kind of like prepare herself to be able to block telepaths, but it's like a 50-50 shot against this particular thing. So Jack's kind of being immune to having her thoughts read kind of made her the perfect weapon in this case. But continuing going forward, they end up finding their way to the Jindu, but turns out that's not what they were after. What, in fact, they were after the entire time was a black box from the Tereshkova. So it's like, okay, wait, what did she do? I'm assuming she was working with Osborne, and she wiped the black box of anything that would implicate them, or maybe she's working for someone else and is trying to implicate the fact is that Earthcom was behind it, or maybe she's planting evidence to make it seem like the Zatarians were behind everything. Or maybe it wasn't like that. Maybe she was just scanning it to get information. Because remember, there's that whole thing about what they're trying to find too, Parallax. So then that makes me wonder, are they on the same side? Her, like, Regan and her dad, and Osborne. There's a connection there, but it's like, it's hard to say like who's on whose side, who's on their own side in this whole situation. So it's just a complicated thing. But then she kind of exposes Jax. She's like, oh, don't act all high and mighty about like, oh, we're here to save Billy's dad. You only here because I promised you information about helping with your parents. And it's like, ooh, busted. And of course it's going to come out because it's like it needs to come out because it's the whole point that Xander was making. Like, you are so busy trying to do what you want to. You're trying to make it seem like you, because that's the thing. Like, if she had been up front, maybe things would have been different. Like, at the very least, it'd be like, hey, but the fact is you hid that aspect shows that it's like you knew that you were manipulating him, because it's like, if you were upfront about the fact is I'm getting something out of this to this woman, can I please, Thomas, like, we're helping your dad, but also you could help me. Thomas probably would have been like, okay, but the fact is you hit it probably doesn't make it that much better. I mean, hell, well, Thomas still got pissed at the end because it's like, you used me like you always do to kind of get what you want. Like, you consider yourself, like, you call yourself my, like, saying like I'm one of your best friends, and like you do me like this. She's like, no, it wasn't like, but even she had to be like, yeah, I kind of did use you, didn't I? I think it puts that, because it's like he can't help but feel used because you didn't even tell him about what was going on. But then it's like, you know, you have Tierney giving her a literal key. She's like, you have to find a lock. She's like, you probably won't be thanking me. You'll actually be sorry that I gave this to you in the first place when you find a way to unlock it and learn everything. Now, the thing is, the reason why I think she knows Jack's mom is because she's a part of like EarthCom in some shape or form. Her mom was, or specifically maybe she was part of ETC, whatever the case may be. Because it's something I've brought up before. I don't think Jax's parents are her actual parents. She doesn't have any parents. She just came into existence, and like they've been raising her. It's almost been like a scientific experiment. They've been monitoring her like all her life, whether like she has false memories of being a baby and that she's actually always been about this age, or whether it's a situation of they have watched her since she was a baby. Maybe she just, you know, whatever the case may be. But I think that's how they know each other, because like, that's why she's probably like, yeah, you're not going to be happy when you find out the truth that basically your entire life is a lie. That's always been why I'm like Osborne's so cold towards her, because that's not actually his niece. It's like, I have no connection to you. You're not even human. You're not even Zatarian. You're something else, you know, pretending to be human. That's what I think that whole situation was going to end up being. So that's what I'm thinking. I think that's why she knew, because she knew your mom before you. Maybe the reason why is because she knew her, because it's like, oh, she, you know, her parents gave, you know, constant updates is kind of what I'm thinking. But what I'm also curious about is maybe they did kind of treat her like an experiment at first, but maybe the reason why they got destroyed is because they stopped treating her like an experiment. Maybe they wanted to tell her the truth about what everyone had planned for her. Maybe they actually did grow to love her as a child. Like at first they were maybe hesitant, but over time it's like they grew to love her personality and who she was, who this human was. They were molded. Well, I say human, but you get what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm thinking. But then there's a whole situation where Thomas ended up accidentally touching her, and I guess because now his powers have grown because of his interaction, like pushing himself like that, has made his empath abilities grow. So he saw something, or maybe even having that key unlock something in Jax, and he sees her killing someone, and that same person is on the TV. So it's like, wait a minute, that was also him, that was him like seeing potentially the future too. So it's like his empath abilities can go to that far. Like, what's up with that? I guess like being around his dad amplified his abilities that much. Maybe, I don't know. It's kind of crazy to like, or maybe it is supposed to be, because that makes me think like she's meant to be a weapon. Maybe she's kind of doing her own thing, and maybe that was her trying to destroy everything as like Pandora would, kind of unleashing pure evil and stuff like that. Or part of me was wondering, or was that like supposed to be what they have intended for her to be this assassin, her to be this weapon that they use, and that was like supposed to be her killing a particular target. Maybe that's her killing someone because she found out the truth about herself. It's hard to say what that was exactly that Thomas said. Now that's a big mystery on its own. But then Thomas's situation with his dad says all terrible things of like, oh, I'm just using you, get out of here, because Tierney had told him, it's like, oh yeah, like the fact of the matter is our deal is done, so yeah, you can spend time with your son, but I've taken a big interest in your son because I've seen his capabilities. Maybe we'll bring him into ETC, which Billy's not about to have. Like, what happened to him, he's definitely not about to let that happen to his son, to be turned into a tool for them to use, and obviously the problems that it causes for people, what it caused for him, so obviously he doesn't want that for his son, so he pushes him away. But it wasn't, he pushed him away without saying anything. He went inside, did a mind dive, and he was like, stay away from me and stay away from Tierney. She's dangerous. Know that no matter what I say, I love you, son. And so now Thomas explains that to Atrio to be like, yeah, we can't do anything right now, but I know it's not the last we've seen of Billy D. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. I was hopeful, but I was like, thank you. I was hoping Thomas would see through it and not just be like, because, you know, I'm glad his dad was able to do that, because I didn't want him thinking like, oh, my dad's back to being the D-bag that he was before. I thought we had a better relationship, but now I realize we don't. But it's like, no, he knows his dad's playing along, so that's going to be something that you're going to probably be diving into. Obviously, they're not going to be including Jackson and all of that, because now she has to probably make up for the fact is that happened. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes, like how the path to her kind of redeeming herself in Thomas's eye. Like, he's just probably going to make excuses not to be around her anymore because he just can't trust her. It's like, I can't really think of you as my friend because you just constantly use me. You use everyone around you. It's like a lot of her friends constantly get dragged into like, oh, what she wants, what she, it's kind of happened since the beginning. So I'm curious. It's like, are we actually your friends, or are we just people you use because you need help type of thing? Which is like, no, you're obviously my friends, but I'm sure that's something she's going to have to apologize for. I'm also curious to see what, the whole Thomas and Atria thing as that continues going forward. Nevertheless, I'm very interested to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.